session in there, and then we had our week-long break. Fortunately, I didn't get a hiatus in that because I am sitting out in Wagga right now. If you look at the picture behind me, that's a horse that was in a paddock or in a field that the day before was green grass and grazing happily. We're in the middle of some pretty serious floods down here, so I'm back on emergency management response with the floods. For those of you in the States we were talking about a comparative area. If you go from Washington State and go across to Oregon and then put a sweep down to about 2/3 of the way down California, that's the area that is pretty much underwater in this area. And it's moving down. So floods are a big issue around here. And that's what everybody is pretty much tied up with. But I'm working from a hotel room at the moment. And Mark has kindly consented to monitor the chat for me this time. So if you do have any questions, by all means, just speak up, interrupt, or put it in the chat. Mark will collate the questions and whatnot afterwards. And we'll be moving on because the way I'm set up here, I won't be able to see anybody. So if you wave your hand at me, I'm sorry if I don't respond because I won't be able to see you. But what we're going to do is just move on with the session, but welcome back, everybody. Now I got to figure out where all these buttons are. This is not my normal setup. Okay. You should all be able to see the screen, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this article came about in reading a back issue of Behind the Mic magazine, where a few years back I wrote a piece called Plain Vanilla, and it was a tongue-in-cheek article about changing that perception of what is plain vanilla calling and plain vanilla this, and it's just plain vanilla. You want something more interesting. And I wrote a very tongue-in-cheek article about 1,000 different uses for vanilla, and it's not plain. And you can apply that same theory to square dancing. And I was asked, well, okay, that's all well and good, but can you give us some examples of how it works? So that's what this is really about. And I think the reality is dancers want vanilla square dancing. They don't want dry, the same thing over and over and over again. What they want is something that they're familiar with that little bit of essence, that little bit of flavor, that little bit of spice, to change their perception of something that they're very comfortable and familiar with, but they can still enjoy it. So I'm going to start with the disclaimer. This article is not about, well, it is about all those that cook with vanilla, those chefs that use the article that I may talk about in this presentation are fictitious, and any similarities between cooking and square dancing calling is 100% purely intentional. Okay, I often hear the term vanilla square dancing and the problem with it, and not enough variety for the dancers. The dancers are being robbed. It's not challenging. It's always the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as I said, a few years ago, I wrote this article for Behind the Mic, and I was asked to explain and expand on it, but also give articles. But I think I better give a little bit of the background. So for those of you that have never met Candy Hughes, she's from Oregon, and she was the inspiration for the original article. And she wrote in that in regard to square dance calling and dance movements that so many of the newer dancers will attend a dance with a caller that they haven't danced with, and they get seriously flustered because everything they've learned is not what's being called. And the dancers get frustrated because, oh, all these vanilla calls that they call it when you get new dancers on. And the dancers are getting flustered with callers that their teaching caller didn't use very often. And we had a little bit of discussion about that earlier. And then the experienced dancers are getting very frustrated with the newer dancers because they're not able to dance at open dances or festivals at the program level that's suggested. And in some cases, you get a lot of famous name caller dances. We get this special caller in where the caller starts out really, really good, bang, and all the experienced dancers are really into it, but he's lost the floor because you've got newer dancers or inexperienced dancers. So after that first wow tip, because most of the floor breakdown, The rest of the evening is very simple, repetitive stuff with no variety. And that's happened a lot. Now, Candy went on to talk about saying things like, I appreciate callers who take the time to teach the alternatives like left-hand styles, mixed genders, wonky positions, that kind of stuff. But she also identified it's those callers that do not overdo it, but find the balance and keep the dancers interested and exciting are the ones that you want to find. And those are the ones that still enjoy the vanilla. They like the cake. For them, the cake is the same. The meal is the same, but there's just slight differences. It's frosted different or it's spiced different that makes that meal, even though it's familiar, worth coming back and have seconds to. Well, it's those callers dancers that come back to their home club and their own class from dancing with another caller at a dance somewhere, and they feel excited and puffed up with success. These are the ones that are going to bring their friends into next year's classes and actually learn over and over with them and build that society. So it's the vanilla type thing that we want to start expressing. Vanilla is not plain, it's not the meal. You don't have a meal of vanilla, but you do have a meal that can be enhanced with vanilla. So what that said to me is dancers like to feel and they like to be occasionally challenged, but more importantly, they like to dance with a challenge succeeded and not be abused by callers. And I do call it abuse because it is a form of abuse. So when we talk about caller abuse, essentially we're talking about two forms. Form one is when the caller feels that, oh, the dancers can't dance, I'm going to deny them the program that they can dance. I'm going to make it so simple that everybody can dance. Yippee, everybody's dancing every tip. I'm successful as a caller. And that caller is not paying any attention to the dancer's frustration or giving them any innovation or style in what they already know. He's just, this they can do, so I'll do it again and again and again and again and again. And the second one is the callers that abusing the use of the program to the point of dancer frustration. In other words, they're going to push it and they say, well, it's a mainstream dance, I'm going to call mainstream. You know, heads, left, spin the top. What the heck is that? You know, that's the first call out of their mouth. Dancers break down. No, it's on the mainstream program. You should be able to dance. Those are the two excessive forms of abuse. And what we want to find is that middle bit in there. Now, the baseline standards are food. Spin the top is food. It's choreography. It's finding that balance to spice it and enhance it and bring it in to draw it all together. And that's what vanilla is good for. I used the analogy earlier. You can take flour and egg and water and baking powder and a couple teaspoons of sugar, put it in a pan, mix it up, bake it. It'll rise up. It'll look like a cake, but it's going to be dry. But put a little bit of vanilla in that and watch what happens. The whole perspective changes. So in other words, from a dancer perspective, there's often no choice between what they consider plain vanilla or a full caller is just being clever and calling for themselves program. And these two extremes are essentially plain dry vanilla cake or a stack of prepared icing that is nice to look at, but it's so sickly sweet that if you eat it, you can't take more than a bite without being sick. So that pile of icing looks great standing there as long as you don't touch it. Okay. What we need to do is the simple part of using these flavors to balance it into something that everybody can enjoy. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So if we look at the two dancer perspectives in the extremes, the first and most common of these is the plain vanilla flavoring perception or artificial vanilla extract. Those are vanilla. And I'm going to talk about vanilla, but you've got to make that association between calling and cooking. The second is natural vanilla. This is the real stuff, not the artificial flavoring. Now, you can use both effectively. Okay, the problem with vanilla is it's neither choreography or cake, but it's a perception. Vanilla is the flavoring to enhance the cake. And unfortunately, that phrase has become a caller's call to arms, where the flavor becomes both the cake and the icing, and it's got nothing to hold it together. And I'm pretty sure if we look in the back of our mind, we can all find a caller in our head somewhere that said, oh, you know, your calling's just, it's getting boring. It's just the same stuff over and over again. And they suddenly change it so radically that you can't dance to it anymore. So what you've got to realize is the problem with cooking with vanilla or with that enhancement is not the vanilla, it's the chef or the caller, if you will. The chef has to know what the outcome is that he or she is trying to make. And when they do that, they can determine, the secret of plain vanilla calling, finding the right balance to make it all work and achieve that desirable outcome for the dancers. Now, some chefs, think callers, use only the pre-brought vanilla extract and they follow a fixed written recipe. They're very successful at making the same dish over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, even though that dish is really, really well made and the vanilla is really well balanced, eventually you get tired of eating it. Okay. Other chefs will use natural vanilla, vanilla extract, or vanilla concentrate, raw vanilla bean, whatever. And too often they explore the use of this flavoring to the point of very bizarre, very undefinable gastronomic horrors that make you want to politely run for the nearest toilet and vomit. That's what that calling ends up being. These callers, these chefs are the ones that diners, or the dancers, if you will, may go to for that novelty experience of something new and realize that after trying to eat it, they will never go back to that chef again. But unfortunately, they come back to their own cook who's cooking that same meal over and over again. And what happens? The dancers think, let's go back to that plain vanilla cooking where at least we could eat. We're not going to get sick, but we're not going to starve. Every now and then, sometimes this chef gets lucky and creates the odd, wonderful dish, as you can see the icing on one of those cupcakes only. But their misses often outweigh their successes. And the diners just keep going to the same chef at the same restaurant, eat their meal quietly, and they silently grumble about the unchanging dessert menu until a new restaurant opens, and then they go and try it out. And if it's good, they leave. If it's bad, they come back and dance, blah. So what we want to do is find out where the successful chef is. Now, a successful chef is what we call the gastronomic geniuses. The successful chef is the 5-star Michelin chefs, the great pub cooks or the great cooks in the bar restaurant where you go for that meal and they've got this menu on. It's not really, really fancy, but it's just wonderful to eat and it fits well. You've also got those fantastic little line cooks at the diner that make that 5 o'clock special. And even though it might be the same special every Friday night, there's just something different that makes it special. They just do something a little different. And the great chefs or the great callers are also the home cooks. And the home cooks are the ones that surprise you with every meal. Even though it's the same thing you had last Tuesday or it's leftovers, there's just something different that makes it wonderful. They may cook a roast beef dinner one night, and then the next day you've got hot roast beef sandwiches on gravy, but you just a little bit of spice. And the following night you might have chipped beef on toast or whatever, but it's the same roast beef, but it's just something different every night, even though it's the same base underneath it. So it's those home callers, those home chefs or home cooks that cook at that level that manage to change one little thing and balance it, and you realize it's different, but it's delicious. And what it is, it's a new take on, if you will, grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe, where you all got together and you made chocolate chip cookies with grandma. And, that fun and excitement of cooking with grandma and grandpa and the joy that goes into the bits and pieces of making a whole meal eventually, or that special cookie that every time you have that cookie, it's a memory of what you had as a kid. That's the kind of thing that we want to find. And that's the kind of thing that makes you want to teach the kids to have fun in the kitchen. That's the kind of thing that wants to have the dancers come back. And this is where the diners, this is where they want to be. They want to build that legacy of taking that experience into the future and passing it along. And if you don't know what I mean, how many of you have ever thought about going to a town where you were a kid and you had a great experience at a restaurant? You look to see if that restaurant is there. You go to a caller, oh, I had a great experience with that caller. They're coming. I usually don't travel, but they're only 200 miles away. I'm going to go and dance with that caller. That's the legacy, and that's what you want to build. So what we have to ask is, why is this important? Well, let's go back to our focus on vanilla for a second. What is vanilla? Vanilla is a flavoring. That's all it is. It's very far from plain. Like just off the top of my head, there's at least 40 uses for plain vanilla or real vanilla, vanilla extract, or vanilla beans. And these range from cold dishes like ice cream to hot dishes where vanilla is used in tempering some things like Indonesian savory dishes, or even, the very familiar wonder dessert that you pay too much for at a restaurant, French crepes, a thin pancake with vanilla in it, but it tastes so different. Yeah, I could glance with 5 minutes of research and print out probably 100 different recipes that call for vanilla, and they're all very different. But did you know that without creating a major disaster, or without pretending it's something it's not, plain vanilla is also used for things like hunger busting. Chew a vanilla bean if you're hungry. You won't be hungry. You can use it to freshen up the fridge. It works as well or better than baking soda. You can deodorize your microwave with vanilla. Bet you didn't know that. Put fresh vanilla or vanilla extract in a bowl. If you paint a house, guess what? It gets rid of that paint smell very, very quickly. What a surprise. You can overall sweeten the smell of your home. For those of you that have bugs, you know how they say citronella and whatnot? Try vanilla. It repels bugs. I don't know if it works on mosquitoes, but it does repel bugs. Minor burns, it's good for that. It relieves the pain of minor burns. It can also make skin smoother, especially if you've got minor irritations, rashes and whatnot. It's an antioxidant, which stands well if it works well on minor burns.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I got in a little bit late, but I'm looking for the callers room. Have they changed room?
You've got to make the association between cooking and calling here. Okay. You can also, I'm not going to dwell on, but you can put beans, like vanilla beans, into white sugar to flavor the sugar. That's how they do it. I mean, wow, you can cook thousands of dishes with plain vanilla without actually changing the dish, but just using the vanilla different to enhance it, as well as other things, as well as, and still not have to do anything at all with your base or the vanilla beyond how it was intended for use. That's the gastronomic delight chef. That's the caller that really wants to cook with plain vanilla. How does it work? How is it broken down? What can I do? How can I use it? That caller is going to go out and actually find out about the baseline of cooking and the baseline of seasoning and make it happen. So what we want to do is we want to smash that myth, okay? This perception that dancers have of plain vanilla, right here, it's 90% eliminated. So if the caller learns to use it right, the caller can enhance any dish that they're calling at any program, but you have to find the balance. Okay, so short version. Vanilla essence occurs in two forms. You've got the real seed pod extract, and you've got the extremely complicated mixture of several hundred different compounds, including vanillin, acetaldehyde, acetic acid, furfuryl hexadonic acid, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't even pronounce, okay? Well, guess what? That's exactly like calling. You've got your fundamental basic formations and foundations of calling, and then you've got, this is so far extreme DVD, even though it's the same movements, I can fractionalize this and do crap that nobody can imagine, okay? So now our chef or our callers learned the basic fundamentals of choreography, I mean cooking. Those callers generally divide into two categories. Okay, this is at the extreme level now. You've got the one dish chef, as I mentioned before. It says, that's the caller or the chef that says, people like my special meal, and the fancy stuff, it's just too complicated to learn. Dancers don't like it. I buy this bottle of artificial vanilla flavor because somebody's already made the flavor for me. I don't have to do any work with it. I'm going to use this written recipe or this written choreography, not follow my own or try to experiment, because somebody's already done the work for me. It works. I might occasionally try one of those other recipes, but I don't have to do it very often. I'm just going to keep using my artificial vanilla flavor because it's easier to buy in the bottle. And then, of course, you've got the mad gastronomic chef. This is the clever caller that wants to prove how smart he or she is with the choreography. It looks good and it works. Just don't eat it. Just don't dance to it. This caller thinks, wow, I can break down that artificial vanilla essence into all those chemicals and play with each one separately. I can break down that movement into all sorts of fractions and play with each component part and then break it up and do something in the middle and put it in, and the dancers won't even know what hit them. Okay. And what's this vanillin they talk about? Oh, wait a minute, that's used in wood compounds. This type of caller or this type of chef is very intelligent, very creative, but unfortunately, it's all about the chef and the product. And very little consideration is given during the creation of all these gastronomic nightmares to the diners that have to try and eat it. That caller, or sorry, that chef will find out that synthetic vanilla has essence consists of synthetic vanilla in ethanol. Ooh, wait a minute, what can we do with that? And vanillin and all these other kinds of things as major contributors and flavors. And there's hundreds more compounds to break apart and play with and fractionalize and difference. And I think you get where I'm going with this. Okay. Essentially, the caller never has to taste these dishes that's going out and thinks, hey, it works. Dancers will never figure out this taste. It's new. Okay. Well, what we want to do is we want to find success. And to do success, you have to take those same two callers, the token caller or the mad scientist. You have to take them into that real category and find out where the balance is. A true caller chef is an artist. And this is what we all want to aspire to be, whether or not that caller is a home cook, with a once a week Sunday dinner, or the 5-star Michelin rated chef that serves hundreds of meals every week. That person will use plain natural vanilla or natural vanilla in their dish, the real stuff. Okay. When it's used properly, it has good and unlimited variety, just like color choreography. When used properly, it's good and unlimited variety. And it's tempered only by the creativity of the caller or the chef that seeks to use that enhancing flavor properly. They're going to enhance, they're going to tantalize, they're going to excite. And even sometimes they're going to use it to soften the overall dish with a simple and comfortable and known variety to delight the dancers or the diners. Okay. He or she's going to tantalize, tease, surprise, delight, and make them experience things that they already know, they already love, but with subtle variations of these old standards. It's going to open their eyes, delight their senses, and occasionally give that pop of flavor that's going to overwhelm them with both flavor and smells that astonish them, that they actually, wow, that came out of nowhere. That was great. And they want more. But we still have, like I said, the problem of artificial vanilla users. They use the real stuff too, and that's where it gets hard to differentiate. Okay, and so I've included these two. That token caller chef, the one dish wonder, sticks to his or her recipe, but often, or I'm not gonna say occasionally, copies a different recipe that works, but always brings it back to their comfort zone. Right? It's just like a caller with modules. Great, you come up with something great, but you always fall back to those 5 foundation modules, and you can see where it is. You never really expand out of your comfort zone. Not a bad thing, but you have to consider the dancers. New people love the meal the first time. After a while, they'll come back periodically to enjoy that experience. But that person often thinks, what the heck? This caller is going to think, they come back every now and then for my meal. They love it the first time. I'm doing really good, but I can't seem to keep them. But what the heck? There's always more people to come in to experience my special meal for the first time. They'll only come in for 1 or 2 meals, and then they go find somewhere else to eat because they're getting tired of that meal. The next one, and in Colling's terminology, it's they dance, they go out, they experience, they come back, they find something new, they either move on or they move up, and you're left without the dancers, unless you're going to take that plain application up the levels with them and leave everybody behind, which is what's happened. The second problem we have is the mad scientist chef, the DBD extortionist, if you will. I'm going to create something that is so marvelous, it's going to confound, confuse, astound, and astonish. But it's not the dancers that I'm trying to astonish, it's the other callers. They come up with dishes that are so strange and bizarre. Sometimes they get a fantastic thing, but others are so horrid, it's like a train wreck. You just can't look away. Okay. This caller knows and studies, is intelligent. Unlimited plain vanilla can be broken down to 171 different aromatic compounds. wow, what can I do with 171 different combinations with one thing? People are going to recognize the vanilla, or rather their choreography, but they're not going to be able to identify specifically what that collar is trying to achieve. They know it's there, but they don't know where it is. That collar chef thinks the dancers are going to enjoy this if only I can force it down their throats or force them to look at it harder so they think like me in order to identify it. That chef has a secret too. He knows that artificial vanilla will fool most people. It also contains that vanillin thing that we were talking, which is not from vanilla beans. It's a synthetic lignin, a natural polymer from you get out of pulp and paper making. So what does that say? Oh, vanilla, this tastes like vanilla, looks like vanilla, but I actually make paper with it. I can write the stuff down on paper and give it to the diners or the dancers, and that's going to satisfy them with the essence of flavor, vanilla flavor. It's all about the vanilla. What can I do with it? You know, that collar knows that wood polymers, I can write it down. I can mix it with sulfates and acids and make 171 things and put it anywhere I want. That's about the point that that collar gets lost and looks up from the choreographic nightmare in the culinary laboratory that they've been creating and say, why is it so quiet out there? Where did all the diners go? Where did all the dancers go? I thought they wanted more vanilla. Oh, well, back to the lab. I got 171 more different compounds to play with. It's not about the dancers. It's not about the diners. It's about that scientist. That's the one you want to avoid. Anyway, I'm rambling here. The purpose of this is there's nothing wrong with plain vanilla square dancing. All you have to remember is that as a collar, plain vanilla is a flavoring to enhance, excite, and tease the standard position, normal choreography type dancing, and so often soften it to make it more palatable to the dancers and make it more palatable for those extended other applications of the dishes that are absolutely necessary to square dancing every now and then. It has to be kept into the program, but you need to have that foundation to build it onto. Everything can't be extended or hyper extended or weirdly DBD. You have to have foundation. You have to have base. Vanilla is a wonderful component of most recipes it's used in, of any recipe it's used in, really. And it is so versatile and so usable for other things than just cooking, as we noted. Okay. From my perspective, plain vanilla is the way to go. It's the balance of essence of flavoring that enhances the choreography. It's not the choreography itself. And what we need to do is get those that cook or call to use vanilla the way it was intended, to play an experiment, to put in new and to put new takes on old ideas without abusing it. As I said, plain vanilla is the way to go, but don't get bogged down on that. Don't get bogged down on, oh, it's plain vanilla. That's a bad expression that we need to get out of our vocabulary. Plain vanilla is not boring. It's only the cooks or only the callers that make it. So all of this crap, as Mickey said, I thought this was about calling, not cooking. This is where it comes in for you, Mickey. How are we going to balance a recipe? And by the way, Mickey, you'll probably recognize some of this stuff because I stole it from you. Here's where we get back to what we call.
By the way, I love cooking, so don't get me wrong.
This is where we get back to theme choreography for success. Okay, so the application is whether you're calling a single tip, a class curriculum, an evening dance, or whatever, or a workshop, a multi-level dance, or a festival, it's always important to prepare. So you as a caller or you as a chef, you are not a restaurant in which diners come in and order anything they want. Okay, that does not happen. What you are is you want to establish yourself being something like a fancy caterer or that fancy home cook where you have a fixed course menu and each part is designed to have something for everyone. Okay, you don't walk in there and say, order whatever you want. There's 100,000 possible dishes out there. No, the chef goes in, the caterer goes in, there's a menu, it's a buffet. Everything is already prepared to work with each other. And that's how you take that approach. What that means is programming and theming the overall evening and each tip to fit into that building theme. It also means you got to find the right essence of flavor. You've got to find the right amount of vanilla to put into each one of those dishes or in each one of those tips to enhance the evening dining and the dancing and make sure they tie together and they flow. But you really got to remember that vanilla you use is the focus. Okay. It's not all about the vanilla. It's the focus that you put in to enhance that part. Okay. It's not a single item, so don't get hooked up on that. It's an idea that blends in and out and ties each component of the meal together that makes the entire experience work together without conflict. And that's the big thing. So let's look at it in a simple way. What we're going to do is take the idea of choreography and we're going to be a one recipe cook. We're going to look at it from a mad scientist perspective. And we're going to finally look at the home cook. Okay, so we've looked at the one cook wonder. We've looked at the mad scientists, you know, these gastronomic things. So how are we going to take those two and find that blend? By taking this approach, what we can see is a comparative example of the most two common problems, and finally, that aspirational goal. So remember, we're only taking the choreographic aspect of calling, and that's a small part of the performance. Okay, you've got to remember that. We're only talking choreography here, not showmanship, not the theming, not the programming. Those are all different subjects and they're important too. So what we're going to look at is 3 concept movements. If I said do-si-do is going to be one of our focuses. Oh, wow, I can do a do-si-do with phantoms. I can do do-si-do with this. I can do a do-si-do with that. I can get everybody in a line of 8 and do a do-si-do with the opposite square. And guess what? I'm in the mad scientist mode now. I can do same-sex do-si-do. And I'm going, okay, side 2 boys, go up to the middle and do-si-do with each other and back out. There, I've done it. Head ladies, roll away. Everybody, face your new corner. Do-si-do, same sex. Now I've done it. That's it, as far as I go. That's my one cook wonder. But I can use a same-sex do-si-do, 1 couple half sashayed, and you use the same-sex do-si-do once and a half instead of doing a pass-through and create a little concurrent activity or things like that. It's exactly the same thing, but it's enhanced it just a little bit. The second aspect or the second course I'm going to use is a same-sex trade. Okay. The one cook wonder is going to go same-sex trade. Instead of saying centers trade, swing through, centers trade. I know, I'm going to change it. Same-sex, boys trade, swing through, same-sex, girls trade. On the ends, boys trade. That's as far as they go. The gastronomic chef is going to put them into inverted columns with a phantom aspect and say, right, same-sex is trade, and you have no idea where you're going to go, but it works in his head on paper. We don't want that. What we want to do is we want to have a balance. So our balance is going to look at same-sex trade from lines facing out. Okay. And it's going to make a wave or it's going to make a line. So this is what we want. Eventually, we want to go to same sexes from lines facing out to end up in an ocean wave. So this is what we want to do. The third part of the vanilla, or our third course, we want to have a center start swing through from right hand and left hand waves. We do that an awful lot. We say it, we call it, we use it, but then we forget about putting it in. So we've got our 3 tiers. We've got our 3 essences of vanilla used 3 different ways. And these should start and build on each other until they're all used together. When we get to the main course and the dessert. Okay. And the dessert is, wow, that palate cleanser and something that is just wonderful. And it just puts the top on the whole meal. All these things should build on each other and they're all going to be used. These are the vanilla flavorings that we're going to add to the base food, which is our standard and familiar choreography to make it a little bit different, but not difficult. Now, Mickey, close your eyes because there's some blatant plagiarism from me. Okay, so the question is, how do we make this work? So in our first step, we talked about the same-sex do-si-do, but we want to keep it pretty standard. The vanilla enhancement here is the do-si-do once and a half. We also want to introduce the centers trade aspect, or the centers doing something, making that ocean wave, and the centers start with the trade, because later on we're going to introduce. So we've got something that we're introducing an aspect that's going to build the flow into the next. So the choreography we're going to use is pretty simple, but we're going to have the boys dancing with boys and the girls dancing with girls in our pattern. Simple stuff that makes it different. That's the little bit of the vanilla flavoring. So in our scenario, we'd use the same-sex do-si-do in the first tip. And eventually, you know, we're doing it in our patter if we prepared modules or what have you. Or if we were site calling, we just set it up so that we can enhance this. And we culminate in a singing call, something like this. So head square through. Very familiar. Touch a quarter, a very common thing there. Okay, that sets my ocean wave. But from that ocean wave, I'm going to do a center's trade, which is the first part of a center's left swing through, or sorry, of a left swing through or center start left swing through, which we're going to introduce later on. So I'm building that danceability in the choreography. We do that center's trade, center's run. I've got same sexes. This is where I've now taken them out of their comfort zone. If I start doing weird and wonderful things with same sexes, the dancers are going to get antsy. So I want to keep my choreography simple that they can do, but it's going to feel different. Couples circulate, boys are together, girls are together, not a problem. Boys are together, girls are together. That relationship didn't change for the wheel and deal. Pass through, I now have the girls facing out and the boys facing in. Okay. Here's where I could do a boys pass through, girls trade, but I do a boys do-si-do once and a half, while at the same time, the girls are going to trade. That feels a bit weird. And now I've got to get it back to something quick because I've done weird. Touch a quarter, boys run, promenade home. You know, all the way around with your corner. That's the culmination of that. And what did I do there? I did a couple circulate with boys as a couple and girls as a couple. I did a wheel and deal, boys as a couple, girls as a couple, always keeping that relationship, and a do-si-do once and a half instead of a pass-through. Nothing is difficult in that tip. It's all danceable, but it's going to feel different. So in the next tip, we're going to use that same-sex trade from the lines facing out and the same-sex do-si-do. But here's where we build on what's known, and we're still going to keep it pretty standard as far as the choreography goes. The same-sex do-si-do is going to be a do-si-do once and a half, but we're going to take it from a different position. You notice where it was in the center as boys do-si-do once and a half in the center instead of the pass-through. We're going to take it to the outside where we got a boy looking at a boy, girl looking at a girl in a box. They have a couple's relationship, one couple half sashayed. They're in a box, but I've got to bring that into where the flow is familiar. So instead of do-si-do once and a half in the center straight, I want a similar type of flow. And we still want it to be comfortable. So we're going to add those kinds of things into our pattern. If we site call, we ensure we do this. If we're not comfortable with site calling, we prepare a few short modules to achieve that goal. Or we set up short routines that are going to achieve that goal. By modules, I mean fixed point module, partner line, corner box, etc. Even though fixed routines are modules as well. Okay, this is that vanilla enhancement we're talking about. We're still using known familiar choreography, but with that additional hint of flavoring that we've chosen in our menu beforehand, back to that good old-fashioned right and left through comfort. You know, that good old-fashioned boy on the left, girl on the right, standard position move that's going to flow into something that we want to dance. So at the end of our second tip, after doing all that wonderful pattern, it would look something like this. Heads, half sachet. The dancers automatically know something feels different. They've tuned on. What have we tuned on to? Sides, star through, pass through. That's pretty standard. Same sexes, boy looking at boy, girl looking at. Do-si-do once and a half. They did that all last tip. Okay. Now last tip that was done in the center, and at the same time, it was a outside trade while the centers pass through because of concurrent activity. So I follow it with a movement like trade by, which has the centers pass through and the outside trade. And you notice the outside trade is not a half sachet trade. It's a standard couple trade. Trade by has the same feel. I make an ocean wave, boys are together, girls together, swing through. Okay. I've got my lines facing out. Or sorry, I've got my dancers facing out, doing a trade. Makes a standard line. Everybody's in a standard position. I've now done something weird and wonderful, and it's just the girls facing out, trade with each other. They've got nowhere else to go, but it feels different. and I'm back to standard, right and left through, flutter wheel. Oh, thank God I got that reverse flutter wheel, but keep her promenade. Oh, I didn't even see my partner in there, but there's my corner, great. You'll note that the do-si-do has the same feel. The trade buys the same feel as that concurring activity of boys do-si-do 1.5 while the centers trade. The outsides are doing a normal trade while the centers, although half sachet, are doing a normal boy-girl pass-through. And it's the importance that we've added that flavor and feeling to enhance the choreography, doing things that are known and comfortable to make it feel just that little bit different, but still extremely doable. So our third concept of the evening was using that center start swing through. So I'm building on each theme to lead into the next one. So in our pattern, we want to recapture that same-sex do-si-do. We want to use that same-sex trade to make the lines or the waves. We want to use that center start swing through a few times from different things somewhere in our pattern. We have to prepare that if we're not that comfortable on sight calling. So this is where prepared modules really help you in doing things. There's other things like setting up a Dixie style to an ocean wave, center start swing through. Okay, that's vanilla spice that is very common and very popular, has a really, really good flow. Don't be afraid to use things like that, even though they are common, because that's part of the theme that you want to achieve. You can use that to your advantage because your focus is center start swing through. And it could be boys, it could be girls, it could be a boy girl. So what we want to do here is what I've done is just a couple of short sequences. I may have done them as full sequences, or I can create modules such as a corner box module or a partner line module or a corner line or a, whatever partner box module, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. That's what it is. What works for you is what you want to do, but you don't want to make the choreography so difficult it can't be danced. You want to use what they know. So our sequence here is these are fixed. Okay. Patterns, heads lead right, veer to the left. Not always called in North America, but it is called quite a bit. Couple circulate, familiar. Now here's where our boys run from a two-face line. They're running into the center. You may have to give them a little prompt, but it's not difficult. They will know it. The girls will slide apart. And then what have I got? I've got an ocean wave. Boys start left, swing through. That run brings them in, they take hands, they're automatically going to want to trade because we've set that kind of thing up a lot with a touch a quarter centers trade. Boys run, I'm now doing a centers trade action, except it's a left swing through. They're going to start doing it even before you call it. But now you call center start left swing through. They do it anyway, but it's going to feel different because it sounds different. There's my left swing through. Now, how often do we call girls circulate, boys trade after a swing through? We can call boys circulate, girls trade after a swing through, which we do quite often, but we don't set it up this way. This is old and familiar, and the dancers are going to enjoy it. Okay. Here's the hardest part of this whole thing. Boy, girl, scoot back. Okay, I've now done something difficult. Ooh, I better get out of here. Extend to a right and left grand. And promenade home. I can also do sequences such as heads touch a quarter and the girls run. That feels different right there. Not hard, not different, but that couple in the center is half sachet. Okay. Centers pass through, that's a normal boy girl. Same sex, do-si-do to a wave. Does that sound familiar? And yes, I do use do-si-do to a wave because in this case, I want to make the wave because I'm doing a center start left swing through. But look what I've got in the middle, a boy and a girl. We've already done it with two boys. We've already done it with two girls. Now I've got a boy and a girl, but it still feels exactly the same. Center start, left swing through. Now that's a bit uncomfortable. Let's get us back to normal. Boys run, we're in normal lines. Pass through, wheel and deal. Centers pass through, Alaman left. Right and left grand will take us home. Okay. And what you do is you'd use these types of modules in your patter, or if you're an avid sight caller and you're comfortable with it, you use from both right and left waves with center start, swing through, boys and girls, and you culminate in a nice, easy singing call figure. And don't be afraid to use it. This is one of Tony Oxendine's figures. Head square through. Most of you probably recognize this. Slide through, pass through. You can do a reverse wheel around or a partner trade. I'm using a partner trade because it's keeping it really simple. Reverse Dixie style to an ocean wave, boys start, swing through, followed by a chain down the line into a promenade. And again, you notice I'm not having that partner relationship to move around. It just feels, because I'm dancing with a whole bunch of different people, it feels different, but they can do it all. Our choreography to this point is relatively simple, with pretty straightforward and very familiar danceable stuff, with just a little bit of added flavor to make it that little bit different. It's doable. It feels like a challenge, but the dancers are going to easily win it. And we've met our theme building ideas for the evening one by one and refreshed them into building each tip following into the next. So now comes our culmination tip. What are we going to do from here? Okay. Our workshop, which is essentially putting it all together, is just doing what we've already done. We put our focus into the material. We make use of the material we have, prepared modules, and culminate in a familiar but that well-decorated cake. You know, we're showing the dessert while we're finishing the meal. This is the meal, the dessert's coming. But it's got some surprising hints of that vanilla essence throughout it. We've had a taste of each bit of flavor, but now it's going to be powerful and pleasing, but hit all of those familiar teases that we want to make it a whole. Okay, so this is essentially what puts it all together into this bracket or into this tip. So we start with heads square through while the side half sachet. Now notice I've got the outside couple as half sashayed instead of the inside couple. That's not hard, but it's going to feel different. Do-si-do. There's my same-sex do-si-do to a wave. Instead of a swing through, I'm going to do a centers trade. And you remember we had the trade from lines facing out, got the boys facing out. I do a boys run. There's my lines facing out. I do the boys trade. Same active dancers, everybody's moving, but now it feels different. And I've done that trade to make the ocean wave from the lines facing out. And it's a left-hand ocean wave. So I'm going to do a center start swing through. It's a right-hand swing through from a left-hand wave, which we've done in our pattern. There's the swing through, centers trade. Wow, that's the weird part. Oh, they're half sashayed. That feels a bit weird, boy, girl. Let's get them back to normal. Girls run, I've got back to that normal position that they're comfortable with, and I want to finish it off past the ocean. Boys run right into the promenade or anyone you're figuring, and away you go. It makes it very, very simple for the dancers to succeed. So what do we do from here? The rest of the dance is building and playing with the program, using the smattering of these little themes that we've got, that vanilla flavoring, to enhance the meal. And that's the pattern, the singing calls. Now, this part is important. Do not put anything new. Their dancers are going to be flush with success. Don't introduce a new concept at this point. We've already done 4 tips. We may have 2 or 3 left in the evening. Keep it in the familiar but comfortable, but blend in that small things like a small sorbet to clear the palate for the last 2 tips. This is where you can really use what you've mastered with the dancers. The remainder of this evening is the well-earned dessert that you've got sitting over there. That's the Christmas trifle. That's the pudding that's on flame and everything else. Got that little bit of flavor, but it's nothing really special. It just looks great because it's culminating a fantastic meal. Okay? It's a finely cooked Christmas dinner, if you will. You know the flavor is nice, but it's all about the presentation here. It's all about the culmination of making sure everything is done. At the end of your dance, just like the end of a good meal, you can be proud to have your guests sit back and go, oh, I'm full, but I'm happy. You know what? Let's do this again. Okay. what the lesson here is, just like in cooking, our preconceptions of what's plain and what is a good meal is based solely on the consumer, the diner or the dancer. We've got to take that perspective back to their point of view. If we want people to come to our dinner parties, we need to be able to cook good food that's enjoyable. You got to be able to eat it from start to finish and end in a smile and want to do it again. In order to achieve this, you've got to learn to cook. And you cannot just serve the same meal over and over again because, dinner party at Mel's place. Oh yeah, okay, we're going to have bacon and egg rolls again. Whatever, maybe a great bacon and egg roll, but it's going to be a bacon and egg roll again. Okay? You've got to learn to balance that portion size, the flavors in each portion, all the spices to see what works well together and what doesn't, because some things don't work together. Okay, each course needs to flow from the next. A heavy appetizer in a meal doesn't go with a solid steak. You know, steak and potatoes in a heavy meal doesn't go with a deep dish chocolate fudge cake, because heavy meal, light dessert, and vice versa. Each course has to blend. It has to have a light cold dessert to finish it if you've got a heavy meal, that kind of stuff. It's all about flavor and balance. And Mickey, stop laughing. Okay. Choreography is exactly the same as this. Okay. You can use someone else's cookbook, but eventually the same recipe gets monotonous. And your dancers are going to try and find somebody else. They're going to find out who wrote that recipe and see what they can do. By that token, too much spice and too much flavor enhancement takes away from the meal, takes away from good solid choreographic flow, and makes it too sickly sweet or too overpowering and unpalatable to eat or to dance. So like cooking, it's important to know what works well, what the foundation principles are from there, and finding the balance of vanilla to enhance the flavor of that common stuff to give that choreographic meal that you're going to serve. Thus ends the cooking lesson for tonight. I'm going to stop share so I can see my screen. Before we go, Mark, were there any questions that came in the chat?
No, then other than you made a lot of people hungry.
Well, as long as they're thinking about it, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm trying to get my screen up because I can't see anybody here. No, that's not right. It's not right either. Bear with me for 1 second, people. I'm sorry. There we are. So if questions, comments, I know I probably drew a lot of analogies there that may be a bit different for somebody, but the essence is find the balance. Don't try and overpower it. We know, and we have too many callers that go to way too much of an extreme, or too many callers that grab the first thing and they never change and develop from there. And they get the new dancers in, but they don't keep them. Their club never grows beyond that one square. Every second year they'll get 2 or 3 new dancers, but then the following year 2 or 3 leave and they're back at that 1 square or 2 squares, and that's it. Surely I couldn't have baffled everybody, or did my mic go out?
Okay, I'll come in on this one.
Hey, Johnny.
Hi. I took over as a club caller, and this was a very, very weak club. And I thought, okay, second tip, I'm going to teach them something new, or bring in that little bit more vanilla, more flavoring. And after about 3 months, I was told by the Cure's wife, who basically it's a Cure run club that they square dance in. They just want wind in the face. They don't want me to put in left-handed swing throughs, or here we go, girls do a scoop back, but the boys don't. I mean, they want the same old that they've always had before. So I've kind of had to give up on my second tip, learn something new. I have a class that I'm teaching on Mondays, 10 brand new people. They're learning how to do all this neat stuff. And I'm afraid that when they go to the club, they're going to say, why aren't we doing all this neat stuff that we learned in class? And it's because the club itself, and the club has two squares in it, it's just a very weak club. And I don't know how to bring them up without teaching something.
Believe it or not, I had that same question about 4 years ago from a caller in California and another caller in Pennsylvania. And they were in a similar situation where they called squares at a round dance club, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I think round should be done at a square dance club as well, but that's just my own opinion. But within that, what I said was, you really have to analyze your employer in this space, because you're employed by a round dance club and they want their squares nice and easy. So what you need to do is you need to look and really analyze the ability of those square dancers at the round dance club, which is the club level square dancing, and see what can they do. So if their whole thing is heads square through, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, centers pass through, Alaman left.
Yep.
Okay. What you can do is, let's do right and left through, heads lead to the left, veer to the right. Okay, that's the big change. It's not going to be different or difficult. It's going to be just that little different, but then it's couple circulate, Ferris wheel. That's familiar, but they're just moving left instead of right. And that's as far as you extend it that week. You know, you keep them what they want, and you build them with a little bit of extension. If you're doing a swing through, do your touch a quarter, center straight, swing through, you know, that kind of stuff, center straight. Then boys run, they're back to, or girls run, whatever, back to their standard familiarity, but you're only introducing one small aspect. Where the problems happen with a group that is very fixed and very staid, they want that comfortable. When you try to introduce it, too many callers say, I'm going to introduce, and let's do a left hand swing through. So heads, left, square through. Good. Do a left do-si-do to a left hand ocean wave, left swing through. We think that because that's simple for us, that's going to be simple, but no, you've taken them too far out of the comfort zone.
Right.
You can, however, do a heads star through, centers, left square through to the outside to do-si-do to an ocean wave, if that's where their comfort zone is, because you've got that right shoulder free, they're back, they've done the one thing that's a little bit different. And then eventually you can say, at the end, you set up that box or that you have left square through 3, 1, 2, 3. I've done my pull by. There's my partner, right and left grand. That's as far as you go in that tip. Don't go any further than that, but you want to use that. And then you want to build that onto what you've done before in very, very, very small steps. You're in a situation where you have a square dance group in a round dance club is very similar to saying a square dance club with square dance level rounds, which I've never understood what that term is, but square dance level rounds, basically we're talking phase 2 or 2+1 or 2+2. That's it. You have to do this. You have to take that same approach to square dancing. Very, very small steps that you can introduce and build so that when your new dancers come, they're not robbed of the experience, but when they come in, your square dancers are going to start, we can get a little bit more. We can get a little bit more. You're looking at about a 3 to 5 year project.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's going to be frustrating for you. It's not going to be frustrating for the dancers. It's going to be frustrating for you. You've got to find that vanilla, but there's a good side to that. You've got a 3 to 5 year project of dancers, which means you're going to be calling for the next 3 to 5 years to build it into something that you want. It's going to be a slower pace, but it's going to be very, very achievable.
And you said something that just totally resonated there. I am a square dance caller at a round dance club,
Right,
as opposed to the other way around. These people are used to round dancing with squares periodically. And my being called in to do a 2-hour dance with rounds in between, they've already had an hour's worth of rounds before I even came into this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got to think that way. I've got to,
You have to, because essentially you're going to get 3, maybe 4 quick brackets a night.
yeah,
If you're lucky. Most times 3 will be the maximum you will get. And so you're trying to treat it like a square dance club with which is essentially, if you think about it, you've got 30 minutes a night if you're lucky. And that's
Right.
what you, because your round dancing is 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 2-minute break, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 2-minute break. If you do a 6-minute pattern, a 4-minute singing call, and then take a 4-minute break, guess what? Your round dancers are going to throw you out. You're back to what it used to be called normal, but you can't approach it like a club level. You're taking a club dance, but that your club evening is over 3 or 4 nights. So structure it accordingly. Instead of doing one schedule, your nightly schedule is over 4 weeks or 3 weeks. And that's how you're going to build it up. So 1 year of dancing is actually 3 years. And you'll be able to progress. The good news is you've also got a beginner group that you're teaching separately from this group.
right.
That beginner group is great. That beginner group can also turn into a club on its own, where you focus on squares and then you join and you can progress with that as well.
Plus, I started a new thing. It's called the Sunday Square Dance. So it's SSD, and it's first, third, and fifth Sundays. That is just for them. There's no round dancing in between. There's no mainstream alternating. It's just for them. And it's 2 hours on Sundays, and that doesn't start until January. But I got that going, and at least those people coming in would have, number one, graduated from my class, graduated from another class that started on a Monday a couple months ago, and it gives them a place just to dance.
John Casey was talking about a similar thing earlier. They do an SSD program where they have a place, they created a place for the SSD dancers to go. Yours is not SSD, you're just calling it Sunday Square Dance. It's the basic and mainstream, as far as if I remember reading it correctly, it's where your class is. It's not SSD as in the program, that's just the acronym that came out.
No, it's the acronym that came up, but it's advertised as SSD. This is a place for you to dance.
Yeah, okay. Is it the SSD program that Color Lab had?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Let's
Then
put it
that's
this way.
fine.
It's not a T.
That's all the question was. When you called it the Sunday Square Dance,
Yeah.
there's been about 4 or 5 of those that have said, we're going to have a square dance every second Sunday. We're going to call it SSD, but it's a completely different program. And I was just going to, if it's the SSD program that Color Lab has, by all means, go ahead. Use
Yeah.
that acronym.
I advertised it. It is not a workshop. It is not a class. It's not a lesson. It is a place for you to dance after you have graduated the SSD program. So it gives you a place to dance on a weekly basis. Because
that is always important. That's what we have to stress for our new dancers all the time. But as I said, the focus, what we're looking at here is adding that little bit of vanilla essence into the program. You've got a place where you can do this, and you've got a longer term project. Yours is going to be a little more difficult because your night structure is over 3 days, but it's very, very doable. The good news is you've got longevity in the program built into the system.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I couldn't, either it was so good or it was so confusing, or you guys are just so hungry you don't want to play anymore. I'm not sure which it is. Wow. What is this?
We're gonna need a Pepto-Bismol there, Mel.
Thank you, Mel. That was really good.
Okay, well, I've sent the presentation to Mark. That choreography that's there is in the presentation, but like I said, that is just an example of how this stuff can be used. But the important thing is to allow yourself to build on what is known, keep them where they're familiar and comfortable, and give them just that little bit of different not difficult, but you've got to carry that theme out. And it's got to be a theme. Mickey made this point quite a while back. When you're going to teach a class, you start introducing them to the movements using stuff they already know. So for instance, centers start swing through. Well, we've set up an ocean wave centers trade. They've got that float. Centers trade, centers run. They've got that. Centers trade, centers cast off 3/4. Or centers trade, everybody hinge. Sorry, not centers cast off. Centers trade, cast off 3/4. Centers trade, everybody hinge. New centers trade. You can walk it around. It makes it familiar so that when you do that center start, and you may have to prompt it, left swing through or center start swing through, it becomes very familiar to them. But what happens is they hear center start swing through. Oh, wow. It feels different. They've done it 100 times. It feels different, but it sets that thought process in. They automatically create that mnemonic trigger that says, I'm in an ocean wave, I'm in a left-hand ocean wave, swing through starts with the right hand, and that they will carry through. And you get to use this stuff constantly. You back away for it for a couple of weeks because you're doing something else, and then you put a dance together that is just fun. You've had what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different concepts. You've played with a program. That 4th week, you don't do a themed dance around new stuff. You use everything that they've done and you put it all together. You use all your prepared modules and you put a mix and match of all of them together so that they can dance and enjoy. Just like Joni was saying, just like John was saying.
Really exciting to share.
Once they learn it, they get in and they dance the dance that is common for them, exciting for them, different for them, but they already know it. Sorry. Was that you, John? Somebody said they had something really exciting to share. No?
Mel, I really got the essence of what you are trying to say. You know, like last night I was at the club's Christmas dance, and I was asked to call a class. So I decided that I'll do double pass through and peel off.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I say I'll make a little variation. So I have line pass through, wheel and deal and peel off. So they got a little bit of hesitation, but I did it a couple of times. So they feel, you know, quite different.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably the kind of thing that you mean, that they are familiar, but it's the orientation that is different.
It is. Yeah. When you do a wheel and deal coming into a double pass through position and you follow that with a peel off.
Yeah.
You want to lead that, as much as I hate saying it, you want, you know, you're starting with basically the same concept as wheel and deal zoom.
Yeah.
That's the same paradigm of flow. But when you're doing that on a floor, especially if you're not building up to it, that's where it's difficult. Were you dancing? Was that with the Auckland group, or where were you calling it?
Pardon?
Which group were you calling to?
It's a plus group.
Where at?
Hmm?
Where?
At the Christmas dance.
Yeah, I'm asking which city. I mean.
Palmerston North, New Zealand.
Okay, so here. Okay.
Yeah,
So
they are familiar with double pass through peel
Yeah, I was
off.
just gonna say they're familiar with that kind of
Yeah.
dance.
But then when I reach something like, you know, a line, so I said line pass through wheel and deal and peel off, so they all face out.
Yeah, and
Instead
that's
of
what
face in.
your group is familiar with doing that kind of stuff at the plus level, which is good.
Yeah.
If you're only doing one tip and you threw that in, that would be very, very dangerous territory. But you knew your group, and that's a good thing. Where you take it from there is really what the essence is, because you've done the wheel and deal into the double pass-through formation, peel off to end in your lines facing out. Where are you going to go from there? you know, essentially you've got to bend the line. Well, then you're creating a bit of overflow, which you've got to change, or you got to do another pass through wheel and deal, but you don't want to stack these things on. You could do tag the lines, anything from
Yeah.
there, but you really have to know your group. But I would not do anything beyond that in an abstract position. You want to get them back to normal.
After they phase out, just take the line all
Yeah.
the way to track 2.
Yeah. Mickey, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, talking about this peel-off thing coming into the center. If you have lines facing out and you call wheel and deal, that's the same thing with zoom. It is only for the left-hand dancer coming into the center a nice body flow. For the other one, it's pretty much against the body flow because he has his turning momentum to the left and he needs to start off to the right. Even if it's called ahead in the timing wise, you can make it danceable, but it's not really very much enjoyable. What I prefer is after that to have the centers do a wheel and deal, and then either peel off or zoom is just perfect. That flows just like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then after that also attack the line is a nice thing to play, because if you take a look at the choreo, a peel off is always that we create or we transform a tandem into a couple. And the other way around is with tag the line, we transfer a couple into a tandem.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, this is a nice combination you can play with. And even with a bend the line type thing. Like if you call, as we said, we have lines facing out, wheel and deal. And I would call center sachet, peel off, bend the line, tag the line, face in. This is really a much turning action and where dancers need to be very in control of what they're doing, and you can train them to dance properly, but it's also a fun type thing. Yeah, you shouldn't overdo it, but combination with tag the line, bend the line, and also with peel off is really nice.
And that,
but as I said,
just using that tag the line, bend the line, the peel off. If we put this into the concept that we're talking right now, your peel off, you're doing the centers, doing the wheel and dealing, going into that, which is fine. Where you have that, that would be your progressive theme, and this is what I'm talking about, for the evening. You wouldn't just start calling this stuff. You would lead to this.
No, you build it up.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just taking what you're saying and I'm bringing it back into perspective what we're talking about. You do exactly the same thing with your dancers, but you take each component part and you build up to that as your goal. There is a one thing that you said, and it's still a bit of a controversy, which is the wheel and deal from line spacing out into a zoom. Now, the body flow on that, if your line's facing out, your left-hand couple takes a step forward and you do the wheel and deal, the inside dancer that's on the left has a right turning flow, and their action on the peel off is basically a continuance of that flow, a forward but it's a slight step forward and a continued right turn. The dancer who's on the outside or on the left side of the couple is taking a forward step and turning left. The dancer is coming in from the other way has exactly the same thing. It's a left turning flow. The leader is forward and away, and the trailing dancer is step forward and do that.
Yeah, the problem is that the couple has the same turning the way, but after the wheel and deal part, either if it's a zoom or a peel off,
this is what I'm saying. Even though the turn is there, it's an away from the center. So that's not a functional problem as far as body flow goes to me. Where the problem is for the center dancers, because they're coming into that, the flow is very much like star through or zoom. It is so crowded in there when you hit that center part, because a peel off is forward and away into that couple. You can't do forward. You cause that sudden turn. You've got that conflict of dancers in the center. You can't go forward. You basically have to jockey sideways out two positions so that center, or out one position so that center dancer can step forward and turn around. it's the tightness in there. If it's timed well, yes, you can do that. But because the peel off becomes a release movement for the inside dancer. That part is unfortunately why wheel and deal followed by a zoom is not a great combination. It's
Yeah, but
not-
it's easily solved with the zoom, with the sachet part before that.
yeah. And all, yeah, that again, that's a different concept again. But what I'm just saying is wheel and deal zoom is a very common use series, a common combination, but it's one of those things that if you're going to use it, you've got to be very cautious. You know, pass through, take a step forward, wheel and deal, zoom, pass through, wheel and take a step forward, wheel and deal, peel off. You've created a big gap in the center. It's comfortable for the dancers. The problem's not so much the flow, it's that tightness because it's a forward and away. That's how you're taught to dance it. Double pass through, peel off. Your lead dancers go forward and away to create that. Double pass through cloverleaf. Your lead dancers go forward and away. Double pass through zoom. Your lead dancers go forward and away while the trailer step forward. That's where the problems really lie on that. It's not so much a turning flow issue because they're already turning in that direction or they're releasing coming in into an S type turn, which is always comfortable. But getting back onto what Mickey said, great combinations. That is exactly the essence of what I'm talking about. No pun intended, and stealing your line key about the essence of vanilla. Going in, you have a concept idea, you take each component part, you build to it to get to that culmination. Once you get to that culmination, you do not introduce anything new. You use what's known and those little bits of smattering of flavoring in and out of what's known for the rest of the night. That's your dessert that people get to enjoy, sit back, have seconds on the trifle, and then sit back with their pants button undone, rubbing their bellies saying, God, I enjoyed that. Let's do it again. But not right now because I'm full. And that's what you want each and every dance if you can achieve it. And if you can, power to you. Any other comments, questions, experiences that people want to share? Guido, where are you? You've been very quiet today.
Yes, I'm quiet. If I don't have to say anything, I stay quiet.
That's not what Edelfrau said.
You covered it essentially to the point. When you call a club, I sit in a club that are, let's say, generally the club has more weak dancers than strong dancers. And even without wanting it, I usually have my workshop theme for the club after the third call or fourth call, because then the square breaks down. Not that it's something difficult I called, but some dancers are just so weak. And it's always trying to get around calling what they can dance and still maintain my motto. I want the dancers to leave the hall a little bit better dancers than they came in.
Mm-hmm.
There is no chance I will make these dancers good dancers with calling once a month, and the other callers that are there don't care about it. I don't know what they're doing, but I intend to have fun with the club, and I intend that the dancers have fun dancing. And sometimes they spark by creativity because of what they're dancing. The other day I had the strange experience that when you call a weave the ring and you find them there is single file promenading.
Okay.
No matter what you have planned, discard that plan for that night.
I usually call them my development department.
Yeah, I do like the call for them because they challenge me. They challenge me to do something simple, simple enough for them to be able to dance it, and still try to improve their skills. And I don't know, it's about a year I regularly call for them about once a month. And one of my favorite starting sequences is Grand Flutter, which is a call that you just call sequentially. It's like walk around your corner, seesaw around your partner, all four ladies chain, all four couples flutter wheel, all four couples reverse flutter wheel, and all four ladies chain, and promenade back home. Even if you tell them that the ladies lead flutter wheel and all four boys lead reverse flutter wheel, they wind up in places where they shouldn't be, and I use it almost each night. I call for them once or twice, and still they can't do it.
Guido,
So, yep.
may I give you a hint?
Yeah.
Since there
Anytime.
are only 4 boys or 4 girls, I would just call 4 boys flutter wheel or reverse the flutter and 4 girls. Because sometimes if the pronunciation is not good, all 4 can very much get into awful.
Yeah.
Serious.
How long have you been holding that pun, Mickey?
No, I've heard that so often, and I realized for myself when I had a recording, and I said, okay, you got to get rid of that, because how many are there then 4 of a kind in a square? Yeah. So either it's all ladies chain, but all 4. There is no need for all 4.
There is something in this discussion that came out. Like, for instance, you're using essentially a grand flutter, right, Guido?
Yep.
Okay. Now
I use the combination of the call, yeah.
Yeah. Now I look at that and I go, like, the first time I came to Australia, they use a grand slide here a lot. It's a more common thing than a grand square, mainly because some caller somewhere back the line, and Jeff or John, you could probably figure this out and answer the question, realize that just like everywhere else in the world, grand square is a 32 beat movement, but if dancers are going to do it in 8 beats of movement and going around the square like they do, step turn, step turn, step turn, wait, I'm done. We've got to find a way to slow them down and dance to the beat. But the adage that comes to mind is, I had a caller that said, I use grand spin. That's our club signature. And this was in Montana. I use grand spin. This is what we do. And we taught it. We used to dance it all the time, but now every time I do, I have to walk them through it. It breaks down, it takes all this time. And I said, well, if that's the problem, why are you using it? It's not on the program. Don't use it. There's enough stuff there. And it always reminds me of the doctor. Yeah, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that. That's what it boils down to. Yours is a breakdown. You're using a sequence that's common and popular in your club, Guido, which is fine. But there comes a point where if it is an issue, maybe you just want to link to all 4 ladies chain, all 4 ladies lead in, flutter wheel, pick up your partner, take them back to the other side. And that's where you go for that night. And then the following night, you can do a pass through, partner trade. All 4 boys lead reverse float, and just do it there and slowly build it up to the point where you're getting at again.
The problem is not that I cannot dance it generally. It's just when I call it the first time, they break down. Even though I use it each month, it's not a call that that they're not familiar with. It's just sometimes you need to rope them. You need to catch them and bring him back in line. I more or less know what to expect when I call it. I try to help him with the with cues so that they can do it, but they always can do it after I used it once and then made a mistake, and the second time it works. It's just what you do with when you say you call plain vanilla. You have the spice that you use, and some dancers just need a second try before they start to like it.
It's like olives. They say you have to eat 3 of those by themselves before you actually like olives. I can tell you right now, it doesn't work.
And so this is an experience that I make with this club.
Well, what you're going to find with this is the essence of vanilla as a flavoring to complement good, solid foundation choreography that's familiar and comfortable is where you're going to find the most success. Making it a little bit different, not difficult, but constantly using those themes. And that's why I love the term plain vanilla, because it's not doing the same thing over and over or using the same spice. There are so many ways you can use that one essence or that different piece of choreography with every other bit and piece to see how it goes to enhance the dancer's ability. And once you do that, you're opening up a whole world of choreography to yourself without expanding out of the programs, without expanding too far out of the comfort zone of the dancers, to find that medium that's going to build and keep your dancers. And when you have somebody new coming in, the way you use it, it's not going to affect them by being this whole fundamental DBD program. Hi, I just finished my basic standard position. Great, come and join our club. We dance DBD Challenge 2, but we call it a mainstream club. And that's where we get to with a lot of dancers. What you're doing isn't wrong, Guido. Everybody, and that's an important aspect that I did leave out of my presentation. There are times that you have dancers that sometimes, like Joni was saying, sometimes you just cannot win.
Yeah.
You've got to find that way.
The fun part was when I called for them about a week ago, sometimes the little devil in me gets pushing, and after they could do the grand feather, I did the same half sachet. All 4 boys lead flutter wheel. That was okay. Then I had him all 4 boys lead Dixie style to an ocean wave. I did that. And I ended it with just chain down the line from this crossed ocean wave setup. Mm-hmm. And I did that with, I thought I need 2 or 3 tries. No, I did it at the first time. So it's just surprising what they can do and what they don't.
I'm going to use an expression that was taught in the Army, and it's about learning how to climb mountains. They start you off on a solid wall that's about 6 feet high, and you learn the technique of climbing. Then they take you to a wall that's about 15 feet high, and you start to learn the ropes and everything else with the techniques of climbing. Then they take you to about a 50-foot wall, and you have to learn the techniques of climbing. Then you go to a mountain. Now, what you've done is essentially that you get the people all the tools and they get climbing mountains. When you take them back to that first wall and you tell them use all the techniques for climbing mountains, that first wall often gets difficult. And the reason is the dancers don't like climbing that little wall over and over using the full techniques. What you have to do is you have to take them back to that little wall, get them over it, get them over the next wall, get them over the next wall, and get them back to the mountain again. And in a choreographic essence is you're teaching them the basics, those basic movements from the standard common position. You take them and you use those basics in combinations, basic meaning movements, in combinations that are going to work. You expand those combinations into maybe a little bit of extended, not too difficult. And then periodically, you go and you use all the techniques, you get to the top of a mountain because you lead them up the mountain to get to the top and enjoy that experience. But then you don't want to go mountain climbing every day either. You want to keep between that second and third wall. That's the comfort zone. That's your standard position with just a little bit of extended applications. If you throw them back to basic, that first 3-foot wall to learn how to climb or 6-foot wall to learn how to climb a mountain, and they've already climbed mountains, and you keep your comfort zone there, it's not going to work. And if you take them climbing mountains every single day with no variation and challenge after challenge after challenge, you're going to exhaust them.
Mel?
One sec, Mick. This is like any club. It's like an archery club. It's like a rifle club, a shotgun club, a chess club, a Scrabble club. They all use that same essence. They bring the people up. They have the occasional, wow, big event. But where they keep them is right in between that second and third wall. The third wall is the goal. The third wall is the goal. That's the challenge every day, with little bits of extensions to learn all the techniques so that you can go to any mountain and use those techniques, so that you can go to any dance and use that choreography. And when something new is thrown at you, it may be a surprise, but you're going to be able to adapt to it. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, there was a poet. He was having a poem, and there were some prose talking about his poem and trying to interpret whatever. And they had different variations, and they were getting really excited against each other. And they said, one thing would be just let's ask him. And then he just said, I didn't think anything. I just wrote the poem. Whatever you're interpreting into it, it's just, up to you. But for myself, I just wrote the poem. I thought it was nice. Yeah. And maybe on Guido's type thing, what he just said, where we're talking, trying to analyze, maybe it's just that they lift a cartoon, which reminds me of square dancers saying, let's scare him today. Let's do what he calls.
Yeah.
So sometimes things just happen, even if we do train them. And let me add to that, you always can call to a good crowd of good dancers, right? That's no big deal. They may challenge you because they ask for more and you have to try to keep up with them. But really to learn how to call is with dancers who are not so good, who have problems with understanding, with trying to get everything done. If you can handle them and you can bring them up to a level and work that crowds and move them, then you are a caller, a leader, and then you really learn the craft. And then you can handle any floor. Believe me, I've got the t-shirt, I've been there. It's the hard ones that make you a good caller.
1982 at the ECTA convention, who said, a bad caller can call to a hall of good dancers and everybody will have a good time. A good caller is the one that calls to a hall full of bad dancers and everybody has a good time.
Right.
Yes, Roz.
Mickey, hang on, I'll turn my volume up. It's better.
Right.
Yeah, Mickey, I agree with you there. I'm learning more from teaching than anything else. And I had had something good on Friday. I was actually dreading it. I had to talk to one of the dancers that was breaking down, blaming everybody and causing havoc to the extent that it was really affecting the club. So I had to actually pull him aside, and not something you want to do, but it went well. And what I ended up doing, a couple of the issues, I thought, well, some of the other dancers do that. So I approached that as a club. So over the mic, I spoke to a couple of the issues for everybody rather than just him. And then I spoke to him privately. And I thought it was that he really wasn't getting it. A little bit like a boy in a classroom who gets bored or doesn't understand. What does he do? He becomes the pest in the classroom.
Mhm.
And that was basically him. So I had to chat to him and said, what sort of learner, how do you learn? What, to assess that. And basically it was watching, which was good. I had to tell him to not blame people. It's not a competition. We're there to help each other and laugh, have a good time. So he did blame someone early in the night and it must have clicked and gone, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. So that was really good. And yeah, I said I can do private. I can pull you aside if you're having issues, explain it properly, everything like that. And he said to me, could you do me one favor? Because he doesn't concentrate. And I said, yes. And he said, what is it? Yeah. He said, can you watch me when I'm dancing? And then afterwards tell me what I was doing wrong. And it made him concentrate more by me watching him. So he didn't have time to muck around or talk while we were calling and that. And the night was so much better. And Yolanda and Stephen know I was really dreading this conversation. And I think Scotty would be pleased because it's one of his ex-dancers. But I think I actually got through to him. So I
Okay.
was really pleased with it, but I was dreading it for 2 weeks, wasn't I, Yolanda?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad for you.
Very glad
The
for
ideal
you.
on that, Roz, is rapport building, which you've managed to achieve. If you can
Okay.
keep that up and keep that relationship where he says, can you watch me and tell me what I've done wrong? In a month or 2 months from now, when you go up and if you keep doing that, what you want to be able to do is walk up that guy. I'm just going to pretend it's you, John. John, you asked me to tell you what you're doing wrong. And unfortunately, I really have to tell you, you're doing something very wrong. You're not trusting yourself because I can't find anything that you did that I can fault. And when you have that conversation, you'd be surprised just how, so I'm going to keep watching you because I know there's got to be something, but I can't find a darn thing. It becomes a challenge. It's that kind of rapport and reward that is going to keep that dancer with you for a long time.
And the interesting thing too was that near the end of the evening, he came up to me and he said, hold out your hand. And I went, uh-oh, why? And he gave me a lolly. And it was a bit like the student giving the teacher an apple.
Mm.
And I thought, when he did that, I thought, I've got through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've just got to remind him to keep at it.
Two things I usually do and distinguish between the angels and the students. If there's one always talking from the students, then I, just call and then I have, always with a sense of humor. I say, please, there is no talking to the bus driver while we're on the journey. Right. And they understand. And if an angel starts talking, explaining, I say, okay, I'm the marshal. Okay. Matt Dillon. Some of them, they know it. And I don't need a deputy. Or would you like to be Festus? And some people smile. And I see a lot of people smiling now. And if they smile, then you have another joke you can do. But, it's always with a purpose to try to loosen up. But, making things clear is, now, if you did smile, you understood. But then you're not 25 anymore.
Yeah,
because
I was just about to say that, Mickey. And I think you're probably looking at about 35 now.
Well, those are the stories from my grandfather. Have I told about that already?
Sure they are. Now Janet's left us, but there's one thing, a couple of comments that come up on how you build into this. Mickey alluded to things, but he used some choreographic concepts based on what Key was saying. I'm just going to take this back a step to a little bit simpler. So I'm just going to share my screen here once more. So the situation Joni was in, the reason I'm doing this, even though she's not here, is it's still going to be recorded, is when you look at what you're calling and what you're doing, if you do have to get out into expansion, this is what I call the expansion, the vanilla flavoring, you've got to put that essence in there to enhance the flavor of something that's known, but you don't want to be sucking on a vanilla bean all day or drinking a bottle of vanilla extract or eating icing. You don't want to be dancing half sachet DVD, but you want a little bit. So I've just done this up quickly. So when you're calling a head square through or a side square through, that's not a problem. Going into a touch a quarter, that's not a problem. Centers trade we've done. Now, this is where I've taken them out of the comfort zone. What do I want to do? And Mickey, you talked about this, and we've done a couple presentations on this. When you take them out of their comfort zone, you want to do what you want to do quickly, and then you want to get them back into that comfort zone for a quick resolution. So in the example that Joni was taking, I've now taken them out of their comfort zone. I want to do something. Couples circulate. So you can either say boys together, girls together, couples circulate, or same sex circulate, however you want to say it. But that takes them out of their comfort zone, but it's almost impossible to fail, as is bend the line. So that combination that's the expansion of the different. And if I was doing that, I would probably do something like a same-sex do-si-do, 1.5 to whatever. I would probably do something like this. And this is as far as I would push that club, the vanilla essence or the vanilla flavoring on that club that Joni was talking about. And now I've got to bring them back into their comfort zone. Star through is always a great aspect. Star through is slide through. If you've got couples half sashayed or something different, when you've got a boy looking at a girl, star through is your friend. It normalizes. Always remember that movement, star through or slide through. It normalizes.
I'd rather go with a star through, because a slide through you can end up with some kind of mini waves. Really, the best trend is star through.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Star through is always a better choice depending on your next call, because it establishes the hand contact and the boy-girl relationship just because of the way the movement was designed. Okay. A lot of people say, oh, I don't like star through because you got to raise your hand and it's hard on the shoulders. If you get them to make that hand even a touch, they will come down with their hands joined. If you do a slide through, as Mickey said, a lot of times what they'll do, if they're in an awkward position, they may, oh, I'm dancing the boys part, I better turn right, or they'll automatically step to something different. Star through is always your best option, as long as you're not following it with a right-handed or a left-handed movement immediately for the boys or the girls.
And if I may add something to that, because star through is a true sex movement. And now slide through is only at the ending. And if you have a problem with the hand availability or body flow, whatever, you can always, before the star through, do a do-si-do. And sometimes even can, sometimes you have to sacrifice something because you have to make a decision. And if it's more important to normalize and to get everything under control, then you can sacrifice, even, as I would say, sometimes the hand availability. But a do-si-do will always give you that chance to make it proper.
My preference is the star through. I do disagree with you. Slide through is also a specific gender movement. But
well, not if two boys are standing in front of each other.
Sorry, Mick, but the boys do the boys part always. The girls do the girls part always. It's
yes, but then you do not normalize the square.
Yeah, I know, and that was the difference. It is a gender movement. Give me 1 second. I'll just finish this, and then I'll go to John and then to Steve. Okay, but essentially, I like to use the star through to normalize, because it establishes that boy-girl hand contact. And everything is back to normal. Centers pass through, a swing through. She only wants the boys to trade. Boys run. There's the Ferris wheel. Center square through 3. Everything is what they call that very standard, common, known dancing. But I've introduced that one little aspect to allow the dancers to build, but they can't help but succeed on it. And when you do that, next week when you come back, you can keep that aspect and introduce another little thing, and they can succeed. And what happens is you slowly build the dancer's repertoire into their comfort zone while exponentially increasing their ability to adapt to something different without them even realizing it. And that's really what you want to achieve. She's in a difficult situation because she's in a round dance club that wants to have a square between each tip. And it puts her in a position because she's thinking like a square dance caller. It would be like a round dance cure. Hey, Steve Potter wants to have rounds between each tip in his club. He wants square dance rounds. Great. You get a cuer that comes in, and the first cue is a phase 2 + 3. Then she does a phase 4 + 6, and then a phase 7 + 38, or whatever it is. As you can tell, I haven't round danced in a long time. And you have to bear in mind that square dance calling is designed that you advertise a program. That's the program. Nothing off that program should be called at that dance. Round dancing is very different. Round dancing says phase 2 + 3, which means there's 3 movements off the next dancing program, but you don't know what they are until you're actually on the floor. Or phase 3 + 2. You're dancing phase 3, but there's 2 phase 4 movements. If you tried to do that at a square dance with square dance level rounds, you'd be booed off the floor. If you try to apply that same mentality at a round dance and you're a square dance caller, you find the same issue. So we had John. Hello, Daryl. We got John and then Steve.
Yeah, Mel, one of my favorite normalization movements is actually touch a quarter. And if it's boy, girl, you can touch a quarter, girls do a U-turn back. I find that it's hard for me because touch a quarter is so far down the SSD program that it's disappointing. But I find that I have a lot of people, I've come across a lot of people in my time that have trouble lifting their arms. So star through for me, to me, is a movement that can cause problems. Whereas touch a quarter is so much easier. They only have to put their hand up to do a touch a quarter. Touch a quarter girls U-turn back really flows for the girl as well because she's turning the same way.
I understand that completely. One of the things that I'm a very strong proponent of is and it's not an age thing, although it is more applicable to age. When I learned to dance, when we learned star through, dive through, all of that, we learned how to dance the movement, but we also learned to dance it as a release movement. Because in our club, we had our youngest dancer was 6 years old, our oldest dancer was 96 years. And the 96-year-old was able to dance better than a lot of the 40-year-olds. Don't get me on that one. But you also learned to do the movement, but you learned if you have a physical issue or a capability issue, to just raise the hand to their touch and do it as that was part of the teaching. Because we've condensed these programs so tightly, we've lost a lot of that choreographic styling and adaptation that people have learned. One of the cautions I give you, though, trying to use touch a quarter as a normalization move works when you have a boy-girl together. Touch a quarter, boys run will always get you to a normal standard boy on the right, girl on the left. Touch a quarter, girls U-turn back. You could be into that kind of essence. That will also normalize you, but then you're really restricting what you want to do after that. But it is not, I don't call it a normalization move, in that star through will create a boy-girl opposite, will always make a standard facing couple solution. Touch a quarter, you have to follow it with something, be it a center trade, boys run, or something like that. So be cautious, because for you, it's not an issue because that's in your head. And you can tell you learned to call probably late 70s because that's what was there. Touch a quarter, girls turn back, that establishes the lines or the boxes or what have you. For a lot of callers today, trying to recognize that from different formations is a bit difficult because it takes you to that wave rather than the couple relationship facing the same direction. But if it works, as I've always said, if it works for you and it works for your dancers, you're doing it right. Steve, you had a comment.
Yeah, as mine was on watching out for rough dancers on star through, rough, especially male dancers. Friend of mine, his mom, she went to do a star through and the guy pulled her arm down like that, ripping her vertebrae in her neck.
Yeah.
So
And again, that's not a problem with the choreography of the movement. That's a problem with dancers not
Yeah.
being able to dance and not being taught to dance, and more importantly, not being able or not being taught respect on dancing. Daryl's just joined us, but he made a comment in one of these sessions way back. It's not about teaching your dancers to dance. It's also about teaching your dancers how to tell the other dancer not to do something. I don't want to be twirled. Doesn't have to be a sash, a little bit of downward pressure on the hand. When you feel that, you got to teach your dancers, you feel that downward pressure, don't twirl me. I can't remember exactly what you were saying, Daryl, in those kind of things, but it was something to that essence, that we've got to get the dancing back in the dance and let them actually enjoy it rather than get their first wins. Daryl, you've just joined us. I wanted to make a comment. I saw you had a training session or pop quiz on Zoom today. I heard a few things about it. Sorry, I didn't. I'm on emergency management, so I'm very limited in my resource. I'm calling from a hotel room in Wagga, but I wanted to find out how that went, and welcome.
Well, it was interesting. Whether I do that again sometime or not, it didn't turn out the way that I had imagined, but I'll talk to you later about that. But the business about holding the hand down, that had to do with twirling the girl.
Yep.
I tell the ladies, if you don't want to twirl, all you have to do is push down on that hand, and the fella should get the idea. Of course, I explain that to new dancers in the class, so the guys get to hear it at the same time.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, we've lost a lot of those little aspects of teaching in the rush to get them through the program and on to the next program so quickly. Whereas we've lost the aspect of dance. One of the things I would very strongly recommend when you're teaching a new class, if you don't want to twirl, you teach them how to prevent being twirled, how to prevent doing something. If you're in an ocean wave, and I kid you not, what Stephen said about a star through, if the hand is here, it takes 3 pounds of pressure, if that elbow is stayed, 3 pounds of pressure to dislocate an elbow or a shoulder. That's all it takes. And if you're not sure what 3 pounds of pressure is, fill up a coffee cup, put it on the floor, bend down and try and lift it straight up. That's 3 pounds of pressure. And that's just a coffee cup full of water. That's what it's equivalent.
Or as we Bavarians say, a full beer mug.
A beer mug. If you hold it like that, you've got nowhere to go. So teach your dancers to dance properly. I would like to expand on what Daryl was saying. When you do that, arrange with a couple of the dancers that it's a test. And you say, I got a test for you tonight. And you pick 3 or 4 of the ladies and say, right, every second figure, I want you to prevent that all the boys in your square from twirling you. You know, make it a game. It's like John was saying at the beginning, make it a game. If you're going to use playing cards to say, this is what I'm going to call in this tip, and you don't structure it, well, you can do that occasionally, but make it a game. Give the deck of cards to your dancers, have the dancers come up and say, pick a card. Okay, that's the focus of your thing. I want this tip to center around spin chain through. Pick another, I want this tip to span, center around square through or whatever. Get them involved, make them part of the dance, make it fun for them. You are only calling for one reason, and that's because you have dancers on the floor. If you want to keep calling, you better keep those dancers on the floor. Otherwise, you become that gastronomic mad scientist that's calling for the piece of the paper to find out how many different ways you could actually use vanilla that it wasn't intended to be used. And nobody wants to dance to that person. Janet, are you still with us?
Looks like there is smoke in the
I
forest.
am
with Bumby.
still with you.
I was just saying your deer has caught on fire.
Oh, I don't know why that's doing that. That's weird.
Probably just the camera angle. Anyway, you're very, very quiet today.
Okay.
Janet, it might be a ghost.
It wasn't a criticism. I was just asking if you had anything to add. I was just seeing if you're still there.
Well, yeah, I'm still here. I'm actually, I've pulled up Colorama and I'm trying to do choreography as we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Hi, Mel.
Yes, Keith.
I don't know whether you people has heard of a story that Brian Hosky told us. He said he went to China and called side face grand slide. And the Chinese people has never heard of it. You know, the dancers, they got a lot of big clubs. And what they did, they actually dance as side face grand slide through.
Yeah.
So when they meet someone, they do a slide through. So eventually that choreography becomes side face grand star through. And it was quite fun, he said, you know, and this achieved the same thing.
Yeah, it would. It is one of.
Have you danced that one before?
Yeah, in Germany.
Oh, okay.
But it's one of those things. Actually, when I found it the first time, it wasn't because it was being done that way. It was just a little gimmick that some of the dancers would do.
Oh, so you consider that as a little of vanilla?
Well, the movement itself, grand slide through or grand star through, done in that concept, does exactly the same thing. But
Yes.
when I was doing it, when it was introduced to me first, was they would meet and they would do a star through it, or they would do a swing, and you just swap sides back, and which it does exactly the same kind of thing. But it is a concept of a movement. But what you're saying is actually a resonant thing. It's got two aspects. If Brian Hotchkiss told you the story, chances are everybody's already heard the story. and you can tell Brian I said that. No, but getting back to it, it highlights something that what may be popular in your area, such as grand slide. When I came to Australia, that caught me completely off guard when they did a grand slide. But it's done everywhere here. My first dance I went to in Australia, they called grand slide. I went, what? Oh, okay. I had to think for a second. When you think something is very, very common in your area or very common, chances are it's not. It's like the expression, common sense is not common. Common to you is not common elsewhere. And that's why Jeff made a comment a while back, Dave Prescott, Tony Oxendine, when we were here, whenever you start, you want to start by feeling out the floor. Don Beck wrote a nice paper on that with some ideas of what you can use to feel out what the capability of that floor is when you're calling to a strange crowd or a new crowd. You've got to get their metering, and you start small. You build to that point where you see they're having just that little bit of, I have to think about that, but I'm getting through it. And then you back it off 2 notches. That's your program level. And that is a very, very good guideline. Using the essence, God, now you got me saying it, Key. You had to put that in as a joke, the essence. Using the flavoring that we were talking about today is also a good way of achieving success. Once you've adapted or found that level, you've got 2 or 3 different meals prepared on your menu. You know which meal you want to pick. In other words, you know which theme you want to go with, whether it's, nice and easy up here. It's got to be tailored and designed for the diners. It's got to be tailored and designed for the dancers. And that only comes with being prepared to call. People that have been calling for a long time find this easier because they've got all this stuff prepared in their head. So it may only be a 20-minute mental note to structure because they already know it. For a new caller, like Yolanda, I want you to come and call a dance for me. It's going to be a 2-day dance, mainstream dancers, but here's the themes I want you to go, and you're calling this tomorrow night. And she would probably pull out a shotgun and shoot me because it would take too long to do that kind of mental preparation for somebody that is a new caller. Whereas if I said the same thing to Mickey, and I said, yeah, the dance is in 2 hours, he would probably look at his notes and go, okay, well, I'm just going to feel out the floor and then I'll theme this. My focus is I want to get him through spin chain through from left hand waves. Everything's going to lead to that, and he'll build his program to lead to that. And it may take him, an hour and then another half hour to set up the hall and a half hour to greet all the dancers coming in the door, because he's been doing it for a long time. It's all relative, but the focus is exactly the same. It's on the consumer to make them happy. Anyone else?
I don't get it.
You don't get it.
No, everything, Mel, everything you said was centered towards choreography.
Yeah.
And a program is more than choreography.
Yeah, I said that in the presentation you came in.
Okay, I wasn't here, sorry.
Yeah, no, we focus. And what I was talking
What,
about.
what time does this thing start these days?
9 a.m. Sunday in Sydney. Where you live in, Daryl?
The Pacific Northwest.
2 o'clock our time.
2 o'clock our time?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's why. Hey, you went, how many hours overtime are you on right now? Good grief. Don't you people have a life outside of this?
Hell no.
Hey,
Yeah, no, I did say that in the presentation. We're just talking about just enhancing the choreography instead of blowing it all out of proportion.
okay.
But
So you did a nice job on programming, no doubt.
Yeah, the various aspects of calling, and I stress this over and over, and it's good you brought it up again. Choreography is only one tool in the toolbox, and it is not your most important tool. Okay, your showmanship, your rapport, your presentation, what you do with the movements, how you build that relationship with the dancers, everything else that goes into that evening has to be included. Choreography is just the means by which you deliver your message for them to have fun, and they have to be able to succeed at it. But even if the square breaks down, if you've got the rapport and the ability and the laughability, and you change everything to give them a good time, they're going to have a good time. That's not your choreography doing it. That's you doing it. That's your program doing it. That's your rapport doing it. That's your presentation. That's your showmanship. All of that goes into it. But no one aspect of that should overshadow any other aspect. They've all got to work together, just like any other recipe.
No doubt you did mention the standard application booklet, right?
Yeah, we talked about standard applications and
the booklet for the new callers that might not understand the difference between one thing I have found and had experience with in the session earlier today the pop-up session. The newer callers can understand flow and combinations of movements, but don't necessarily know the end result of what they call.
Yep.
It's legal. It should being the most dangerous word in a caller's vocabulary. It should be okay to call, but there's a lot of stuff that's not okay to call. What was it that, not realizing that what they did call, and this probably clear off from your subject.
No, it's actually very, very much on topic with the subject. Is when you're doing something, you need to know what works together and what doesn't work together. So like one of the other aspects of being a caller that's part of this is your call analysis. If I call star through with a boy facing a girl, I have to know that that's going to give me a change of direction and also build a different relationship as a couple. If I call touch a quarter, it's going to give me a change of relationship. It's going to give me a different relationship with the person I'm holding hands with, and it's going to establish a mini wave with that person, or it may establish an ocean wave. If you don't know where they end up when you call something, it's very difficult to call the next call smoothly and fluidly. And this is the essence of what we were talking with vanilla. You need to have those good solid foundations in the choreographic aspect, which is what we're talking about now. You need to have your choreographic foundations, your fundamentals down, your standard applications and how to move dancers back and forth across the square and around the outside of the square. before you start playing with the extended applications. But before you start playing with extended applications, that's where you have to learn how to use vanilla. You have to know how to give that little smattering of flavor to enhance that standard, just that taste that seems different, not difficult, that they succeed and they enjoy, that you can build on each aspect of the meal. Yes, Daryl.
Okay, the thing that pops into my head was touch a quarter and boys run. Now, dancers dance that pretty much by rote.
Yep.
And most of what they dance by rote. For the non-English speaking public out there, rote means that you've done something often enough that you expect it to always be the same. So touch quarter boys run seems like it ought to be a really good thing to call. Although if you're going from facing lines and you say touch a quarter and you have single file columns, right hand columns, and then you call a boys run, the dancers may do it, but the caller needs to understand that the dancers are not used to going to a trade by formation,
Yep.
Which is where that would end up. They're used to doing the touch quarter, single file circulate, boys run, winding up in normal
Boxes.
facing couples. But rote, callers call by rote, dancers dance by rote as well. So then when you talk about standard applications, that's what it's all about. What are the things that you can expect the dancers to do when you call something? If you're traveling outside of your own club, you should know ahead of time what 90% of the dancers, no matter where you go, are going to do almost unconsciously when you call it.
Yeah.
And build from that. And I'm sure that you said all that today.
I was just
But
gonna say,
I just had to
Daryl,
put my 2 cents worth in.
you're gonna have to go back and watch watch this presentation.
I guess
But
I am.
I'm actually very glad that you are saying it, because for those of you that know Daryl, he's been calling for at least a year now.
Yeah, at least.
and it just emphasizes that when you've got that many decades of experience that has worked effectively, this is not new stuff that we're talking about. This is take a
Half
breath,
a
take step
decade.
back and look
I've
at it.
got over
I've got-
half a century in this thing.
Yeah. I've got somebody with their hand raised, but I don't know who it is. I've got a symbol here that says.
Well,
raise
it's
hand.
me, Janet.
Hi, Janet.
And
Go ahead.
I was like Daryl says, a lot of newer callers don't recognize the ending formations or whatever in terms of flow. I have been working on my call analysis sheet for separate. And my question to everybody is, around in this area, they call separate around 1 or separate around 2, but nobody ever calls just separate, and it is a call. So is separate used in and of itself in your area of the world?
Well, I'll start that off here in Australia. Some do, some don't, and you are absolutely correct. Most of the time when you see separate, it's heads square through, split the outside 2, separate around 1, make a line, or heads pass through, separate around 1 or around 2 to make a line. Those are the 2 most common uses that you're going to find it. That from a box, split 2, separate around 1, or pass through, separate, where it becomes sort of that cloverleaf type flow. If you want to really start introducing that, and this is an odd way of actually seeing it, do something like heads half sachet and separate around 1 or around 2. That way you've got, and you can clarify it, boys together, girls together, or you can, and once you get that, you can do heads separate around 1, make a line. Lines, and they're standard lines, but you have to introduce that slowly if it's not common in your area. It's like anything else. Common is not common.
Well, I guess my question is, if I just said heads pass through, separate, they are standing behind the sides facing their opposite, correct?
Oh,
Correct.
And so then if you said like center star through, we've got lines.
Correct.
And so you don't have to use around one, you just say separate, correct?
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Just say separate?
Why, yes, why would you want to do that?
My initial question was, I was wanting to know if separate is used individually in other areas of the country, because in my area, the only thing we ever hear is separate around one or separate around two. I was just
Okay,
curious.
can I give
what's-
you something fun to play with, fun and easy for your dancers that uses separate?
Sure.
Heads or sides, separate and star through. And you'll get them through it the first time. We said behind the sides, heads, separate, behind the sides, star through. That way and you can do that during the dance, they'll get it. And it's a very nice way to eliminate some of this head star through and zoom and things like that that don't really flow all that well. It's a shame. I agree with you, Jenna. It's a shame that more people don't use separates and splits. Mel, have you done a thing on goal posting?
Yeah, we did, but.
Okay, well, that's,
But
that,
hang on a second. I haven't come back to it because you promised me that you were going to do a session on that about a year.
I
and a half.
did?
Yes.
Oh, well, now's a great time to do that. I'll do it right
I'm
now.
not letting you out of it that easy.
Well, and I think I saw lots of people with thumbs up, so that answered my question that it is used individually in other areas of the world.
Yeah, Janet, that does need.
Guido, is it done that way?
Hang on a second, Daryl. It does need to have a clarification on that. What Daryl was saying, heads separate and star through. Separate itself ends with the two dancers, it's turn back to back, walk away from each other. And when you meet another dancer, that's where the call ends, unless there's something else given. As Daryl said, separate and star through is giving that. I have seen it used here in Australia. Heads separate, sides pass through, and partner trade, you end in that line, and then you do something from lines, that kind of stuff. But it is not as common as heads separate and when you meet, do something. So it is a qualification, but the essence of what I took out of the importance of this is, if you're going to call heads separate, answer the question, why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve with that? Because that's going to tell you how you want to use it and how to expand your repertoire. I've got hands up. I've got Mickey with his hand up, and then I had John with his hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I like what Daryl said with the separate, and you're walking to the next axis, right, around the others, and with a star through and standing behind each other. And then it is nice if you start the whole thing that they'll be facing the back of the sides, for example, standing there. I prefer not to have the heads separate and do the star through, because they're looking in and more or less they're looking forward to an action which is going forward. If I do the same thing, I would do the heads right and left through, half sachet, and then pass through, and they're facing out and then separate, which seems for them to work more fluently and have the same effect and the same choreo effect for the star through. I would not play on dance by definition tricky type things with beginners on that. But if you want to have some eyebrow rousers, you could call heads separate and whatever the sides and pass through, and for the C dancers and watch them if you call a split square through. But you know, that's in a different level where you can play with that extent. But we really should keep it flowing and simple moving for the beginners, so they don't get scared and it's not too much chess playing. Yeah. So yeah, so much from my 2 cents. Okay. And I have a question on Daryl with that phrase about a road. Is that road mean where you put the cars on, or is it another road?
ROTE.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was actually a legitimate question.
Yeah, because
Okay, I
I
do want
understood the meaning, but I didn't know the word.
I do want to say one thing on what you were saying there, Mickey, and you're absolutely correct. If you focus on the definitions, and I heard this on a tape actually, or an audio track, heads separate around two, pass through, wheel and deal. That is incorrect. Okay, because if you call heads separate around two, those heads end face to face with their partner. If you're going by the definition, if you call heads separate around two to align, you've given a direction. And this is where, again, you remember when I was talking about the gastronomic scientist chef starts playing with the technicalities of the definition. The dancers, if you said around two, would make a line. But if that's what you intended to call, this is why I take you back to what Daryl was saying. What do you want to achieve? You want to know what your goal is before you call something. And if you can do that, that's fine. I've got John, then I've got Daryl, then I've got Guido. John.
Yeah, one of the simplest things that I've used quite regularly, especially when early teaching in the separate movement, is heads pass through and separate. When you meet your partner, swing. It is so simple, and it follows the definition that says you walk around the outside of the square until the caller tells you what to do next.
Yeah. And again, the question is, once you meet your partner, swing, you've got the side still standing face to face. Heads are swinging behind the side. Where do they end up?
Well, the heads will be in their home position. If you pass through and separate, when you meet your partner, swing, you're back at home.
Got to make sure they all move on the same pace, right?
So, and that's exactly what I'm saying. When you do that, you're giving the direction, essentially, heads pass through, separate around two till you meet your partner. You're eliminating that phrase out. Now, if you're on a different language, when you meet your partner is the direction that they have to twig on. And those are the little nuances and clarifications that become unique, but you have to make sure the dancers are very clear on what it is your intent is. And you don't want to, as much as I hate to say it, you want to have the dancers feel like it's different, that there's a challenge, but you really don't want to have them to think too hard about how to figure out what you mean. Dancers should never have to figure out what you're trying to get across to them. It needs only to feel that way, but it should never happen.
So long as you've taught styling so that they dance to the music, they'll end up at home together.
It's a good point, yeah. Daryl, you're next.
Yes. Geez, I hope I can remember what I was going to talk about now. No, I do come from a time when we used to have heads divide.
Yes.
Which is a head separate. And the reason they dropped divide was because we have the move separate. That takes the place of divide. And I think if you look up the definition, you'll find that it does say something about you go as far as the caller tells you to go. So the second part of separate is cluing the dancers in.
That's why it has an A and a B.
Now that head separate and star through. That's a very, very useful thing. To me, everything, I've said it before, everything is modules anyway. Now, not necessarily zeros and equivalents. It's groups of calls that I call for a particular purpose. If I call a heads separate and star through, I know that a zoom works very well, and a zoom puts me in the same place if I'd done a star through from the static square. I can do the head separate and star through, double pass through, leader's partner trade, and I've done that 180-degree rotate to a nice corner box to do maybe an 8-chain-4 in a singing call or something like that. So all of these things, to me, have a purpose in mind when the combinations they do. Janet, are you still here? Oh, yeah, I see you there, dear. I
That was cute.
couldn't pass it up. I'm sorry.
Bad puns today.
But I was wondering, where you think they actually are if they pass through and separate. Isn't that what are they in a T-bone to you? Meaning that you've
Yeah.
got the sides facing
In the
and
center, and then the heads would be facing their opposite on the outside. Yeah,
Behind-
I'm
behind
doing
them.
my call analysis sheet, and I was just, working through things, and I'm trying to, I mean, like I said, it's not called around here, and I was just wondering if it was called in
doing the
there.
call analysis sheet is a good idea, and do that. But when you start looking at these movements, of course, in the session this morning, I told the callers that were there, I said, hey, every movement is a mini module. You call it because you know where it starts and where it ends. And it's going to do something very specific for what you're calling. Maybe you want to turn the couples around. A right and left through, we'll do that. A wheel around, we'll do that. But these things, they're all tools. You got little tools that can build into big tools. You can put them together. But the separates, your pass-through separate around one end of the middle, or to lines, or pass-through separate around, but you do tell them what to do. The separate and star through, that's one of my favorite movements. I do not expect the dancers to do it when I first call it, but if I'm out calling, like I used to be, and doing different place every night, I always liked that one because I knew when I walked through the door that the dancers were probably not going to be familiar with that use of separate. So I could take one tip, teach them how to do that. It doesn't require stopping and walking them through anything. You say head separating behind the side star through. And the buildup for that, about the third tip of the night, bracket, you call them in Australia, right? Okay. The third bracket of the night, I might give them a grand separate. Now that's where you have the head separate and star through, the sides star through back out to the heads where they separate and star through. The others, star through back out to the heads and continue through for the 4 times. Takes exactly the same amount of time as a grand square, but it works very, very nicely, and it makes use of that separate to the star through. Okay, I said my piece.
Absolutely correct, Daryl. And Key, there you go. There's another one to add to your Brian Hotchkiss repertoire of grand movements, which we talked about earlier. When you're looking at this, separate and star through was also one of those movements. I think, I can't remember where the presentation was, one of Dawn's or one of mine, or it could have been in the class sessions as well. Separate and star through is also one of those evaluation combinations or evaluation modules for determining a floor. If you call heads separate and star through, double pass through, or whatever you want to do after that, it's just a good way of seeing that's not going to damage a floor significantly because they can recover from it very, very quickly. But it's a good way of also gauging where your dancers are in capability, what they're used to, and also if they can listen. So it is a good combination to keep in mind. Guido, you have your hand up.
Yeah. When I teach separate in the initial way, I start with the old routine Solomon Levi. That's how I start to teach separate. Then I go into, I dislike how separate is represented in the list. Actually, it should be a 4-part call. It should be separate family, A, separate, B, separate in anything, C, separate around somebody, come into the middle, or make a line for D. I use separate as a single call with nothing else, but this is for experienced dancers. It really doesn't make in most cases, it doesn't make sense just to say heads or sides separate, and then engage the others to do something. This is a lot of stop and go calling and dancing. What I do is separate in anything, well, separate and start through, separate, heads separate, the sides face in, everybody go right and left through, something like this. But this is not for the newer dancers. This is for a dancer who has learned to listen to the caller. When I use separate as a standalone with nothing else, I'll start maybe in a quarter tag formation and have the center spin the top, and the sides or heads who is on the outside separate to have a very difficult formation to deal with. But just to give you an example, you could call maybe heads past the ocean and swing through, and the sides separate, and then everybody go right and left through. If you really want to have that formation that somebody's in a mini wave and somebody's in facing dancers, to do the right and left through as it is prescribed in the first parts of the definition as one of the art formations where you can do this.
I think you'll actually find in the Collar Lab, or not in the Collar Lab, in the Cedar net.
No, in the Collar Lab definitions.
Yeah, no. That's the diagram in the Collar definition. I was just saying, if you're looking for that kind of material, I think Jeff Seidel, are you still with us, Jeff? Yeah, Jeff's got a few routines of choreography that do exactly that, the separate, while the others are doing a spin the top, leading into a right and left through from a grand tidal wave.
But
there are a number of those. Yeah.
But this is for experienced dancers.
Yeah.
When you have the centers of a formation do something and keep them busy, then bring the others into position for the next calls. And then you have the separate where the call ends when you meet somebody. Yeah. To create T-bones in the sense of heads separate, to have them behind the sides. This is for teaching. It's just for teaching purposes, that they know here ends the call. I meet somebody and the call ends here.
Yeah. One of the difficulties with that, Guido, I'm sorry to cut you off, but one of the difficulties with that is we teach a movement and then it's just for teaching purposes, and we never use it that way again. And if separate is one of those movements with that kind of emphasis, that if the caller is not using it and using it as it's intended to be used, like you said, heads separate, sides are right and left through, lines up, something like that, whatever. Usually what we get is sides square through, heads separate, split square through. You never see it again until you get to that advanced level, and you have to go back and reteach that. And that is not a problem with dancers. That is a problem with callers. We're trying to force these things into them.
Let me take a step back. When I say it's for teaching purposes, here ends the call. And then you usually don't let the dancers be standing around for this. So it is actually, let's say, heads or sides separate. When you meet, you stop and you listen to the caller. And you might get another call, like a swing or a star through or a box the net or whatever call you could have that makes sense in this choreographic setup you're at. This is what I mean. I use it for teaching purposes, but later on I will use it, and I know I will have to reteach again that they stop when they meet the oncoming dancer. This is, but
I am absolutely in agreement with you. Head separate and star through, great combination. But you also, like you said, that if you teach that's where the call ends, you periodically have to use it. One of the easiest ways that I've seen is heads separate, sides half sachet. Everybody star through. That way they stop the call. You've got it. You lead into that double pass through. Using it that way, using it in the way that it's intended, and it all takes us back to what Daryl said right at the beginning. If you're going to use a call, you want to use
Mel,
it for a
excuse
purpose.
me, but after your combination, you're not having a double pass through formation.
Sorry, heads separate. Sides have, you're right, you're not.
You have T-bones, but
It should have been a side star through.
what I wanted to emphasize
Anyway,
is,
you're absolutely correct. Thank you, Mickey.
what I wanted to emphasize is when you start teaching separate, the Solomon Levi routine is a very good routine to get the dancers acquainted with separate. And then you can expand on that and say, in general,